across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Four 4991000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same message, same number, and I promise to play your message out. It is Monday, March the 30th. Here's what's coming up. Another day, another scandal at the BBC, a massive headache for new Director General Matt Britton. And he hasn't even started yet. Scott Mills sacked from his £350,000 a year job hosting the state broadcaster's top radio programme, the massive Radio 2 breakfast show. Suspended last Tuesday over his so-called personal conduct, the DJ has now gone for good. No word from the secreted Beeb, as per, but worse is his sudden downfall, centering on a relationship that ended 3 years ago. 10 years ago, we're told. His offence apparently historical. Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Hugh Edwards, Greg Wallace and now Scott Mills. Why does the BBC keep handing its most prestigious roles to wrong-uns? 03444991000. Meanwhile, BBC bosses are effectively disbanding the department that covers state and royal occasions in a move that has been slammed as un-British. But naturally, they will continue to send a grotesque 550 staff to Glastonbury to stage 24/7 pop concert coverage at astronomical expense to licence fee payers. Is this what we want from the channel we have to pay for by law? 03444991000. Also on today's show, Kemi Badenoch considers focusing the Tories on banning 2 Islamic practices, the burqa and first cousin marriages. Is she right? 03444991000. And I'll bring you the inside take on what really happened at Saturday's big London march against hate and the so-called far right. For hundreds of thousands of lefty virtue signallers making such a theatrical stand against hate, they were no slouch at spewing hatred themselves, particularly about Israel. Was this gathering of the Guardian reading lovey elite against the far right but for anti-Semitism? 03444991000. We know from last week that no major Jewish groups were invited to take part in this display of unity, this display of mass love. No Jewish groups invited to take part. 03444991000. Plus, the heartwarming revelation that while the rest of us struggle with the cost of living crisis, MPs are to receive £3,300 cost of living pounds handout, and benefit claimers are set to get a 6.2% pay rise. Isn't that special? Also, we'll try to find out what's going on with Harry and Meghan, with the Duke of Sussex putting it around that he wants to bring his kids to see the King, but he's waiting for the King to invite him. Why isn't Charles inviting him in? Because he can't trust his second son, because every time his second son gets anywhere near the British royal family, stories start appearing in the media all over the world. So that's probably why Harry doesn't get invited to Sandringham, but he's putting it about, if the King invites me, I'll come. Why doesn't he invite me? We know why he won't invite you, Harry. We'll talk about that later with royal author Robert Jobson. All that and so much more, so don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Monday afternoon together. Let's go straight over to my first guest. He is a historian and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, Rafe Heidelmann-Koo. Welcome, Rafe.
Always a pleasure, Kevin.
Now, first of all, let's talk about the BBC. Something very strange happened this morning. None of us know the details, so we can't focus too much on that. But Scott Mills is the host, or was until this morning, the host of arguably the biggest show on all of the BBC. That is the Radio 2 breakfast show. In its heyday, when Chris Evans, now with us here at Virgin, when Chris was hosting it, 9 million listeners every day, in phenomenal audience. I think it's still around 7 or 6 million, massive audience every single day. So this is one of the pinnacle prestige roles at the BBC. Today, this morning, Scott Mills has gone. He was suspended last Tuesday. He finished his show saying, back tomorrow, folks. After his show was finished, he was suspended for what we're told is a personal conduct, issues with his personal conduct. We're not sure what that's about. There are suggestions it may be to do with a relationship he had 10 years ago. No, that went wrong 10 years ago. There are suggestions that young men at the BBC have been the source of complaints about Scott Mills's behaviour, but we don't know. But what we do know is that once again, after Jimmy Savile, after Rolf Harris, after Greg Wallace, and of course after Hugh Edwards, that this state broadcaster of ours that requires us by law to give them £180 every year, or we get convicted of a criminal offence, so we have to pay for it, has yet again appointed a man to a senior role who was clearly not suited to it. So there's something badly wrong in the selection process at the BBC. They've got a new Director General. This is a massive headache for him, another scandal. His name is Matt Britton, and he hasn't even started yet. Well, if he wants to sweep a new broom through our shambles of a state broadcaster, Rafe, in my view, he should point his focus, first of all, into the selection processes for these key top jobs, because they keep going to wrong uns, and that is not acceptable.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on the ball there. I have to say, I've never heard of Scott Mills before. I don't know whether I'm alone in that, but it's the first time I've ever encountered him. So I was amazed to see how much this man's getting paid. In fact, the BBC, in the Daily Mail, they had, I think, 50 or 100 of the top richest people with their photographs at the BBC. I only know about half of them as well, actually, which raises other questions. But yes, you're absolutely right. There is something deeply rotten at the center of all of this, that time and again they are hiring and putting into not just any role, but into their top job as newsreader. The top job in radio goes to these wrong uns, as you say, although, of course, we only have allegations against Scott Mills here. But the speed with which the BBC have acted on this occasion, compared with in the past, compared with Hugh Edwards, does suggest perhaps they are beginning to learn how to deal with these sorts of things, because there's been no suspension period. There's been no investigation into any of this. So this seems to be a much more of a clear-cut case here of things going on. Whether that's, a change in policy after Hugh Edwards, who knows? But they do need to have deep searching questions about why they can't detect these things at an earlier stage. What is going on in these HR departments and so forth? Who's involved in these recruitment processes is deeply worrying. And then again, why does the BBC seem to attract these types? Because you don't get these stories emerging from ITV. You don't get these stories emerging from Sky and elsewhere. So questions have to relate to the culture within the BBC that seemingly allows these people to flourish.
Exactly right. Questions need to be asked. And a last point about the BBC. I've covered the BBC for a long time in my checkered career, but my fairly long checkered career. And this has always been the dynamic. This is what the BBC expect of us, the serfs, the plebs around Britain. Give us your money and we will keep secrets from you. We rely on your cash, but we're not going to tell you anything. And what are we getting from the BBC? They've just sacked, as you say, summarily, after just 6 days, the man who presents arguably the biggest show on all of the BBC, the Radio 2 Breakfast Show. This is a massive event. Licence fee payers have a right to know why. And all we're getting from the BBC is we don't discuss personal matters, but Scott Mills has gone due to personal conduct issues. Well, that isn't good enough. We pay for this organisation. We were paying his £350,000 a year salary, and you can't get away with that. We need to know more than just personal conduct. The BBC can't keep these secrets from us.
Yeah, you put it better than I could. You're absolutely right. We are all shareholders. We're all co-owners of the institution of the BBC. There needs to be far more transparency from Auntie than we've seen in the past. I would hope that the new incoming Director General from Google will bring in some fresh air and open the windows and blow out a lot of the cobwebs that exist there. But the institutional corruption there is so deep. It's been captured so much that I fear it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to take years to actually bring in a new cadre of people to actually see any meaningful sort of change there. And of course, the whole institution. The other story you addressed was the fact that they're cutting funding to their royal ceremonial state coverage of major events like Remembrance Sunday, like the D-Day anniversaries, cut from a team of 6 to just one person dealing with all of that. You know, this is my 30th year as a royal ceremonial state commentator for national events. And the one defense I always put for the BBC was that we need to have a national broadcaster because nobody else is going to provide you with coverage of things like D-Day celebrations or these important big national events. That's the purpose of a state broadcaster, to allow the nation to come together, have those moments of national unity where we're all watching the same big major event on television. And if it can't do that, if it's prioritizing Glastonbury with all the anti-Semites that we hear there, like death to the IDF, they're prioritizing that over our great national traditions, the state opening of Parliament, trooping the colour. That, I think, is an even bigger crisis for the BBC, because all of those of us who have defended the BBC for that one reason, well, we're now going to be calling for the licence fee absolutely to be removed.
So what we're essentially asking here, Rafe, is what is the BBC for? I mean, so last week there was the investiture of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Maloney. Now, you know, for me, that was like watching paint dry. I wouldn't watch a second of it if it was the last thing on earth. But the BBC covered it, and I do think this is the head of our official state religion, and the BBC should be covering things like this. And yet they're disbanding the department that does it. Royal events, official state events, that's what the BBC should be doing. Not necessarily just putting on television for populist reasons. So they seem to be divesting themselves of that important role by disbanding the department that covers these austere occasions, and by so doing, I think they are proving that they've forgotten what they're supposed to be for. So a couple of questions about the BBC. Talking of organisations that seem to have forgotten what they're for, what do you make, Rafe, of the fact that the Sun has investigated and established that over the last year, the police failed to solve or even really investigate 92% of all burglaries. And around the country, there was a third of the country's areas, no burglaries were solved at all. And we know why. This is because the police seem now to believe that house break-ins, you know, robberies from homes, are beneath them. So if they're not going to investigate burglaries, then they're not going to solve 92% of the country's burglaries in a year, which is, in my view, is absolutely scandalous. What the hell are the police for, do you think, Rafe?
Police are there to control behaviour. That seems to be increasingly what they're doing. They're controlling speech, and they, I suppose, are trying to silence truth tellers who are brave enough to actually say that the emperor has no clothes and talks about the reality of life in modern Britain, because I can't see them doing anything else currently at the moment. As you say, it seems to me that the police have decriminalized burglary, the police have decriminalized theft, They've decriminalized shoplifting. And it seems to me all the more remarkable now that we have CCTV. I mean, when somebody is murdered, for example, we usually catch the people very quickly because it's just so easy now to trace every step of their CCTV journey. Why on earth people can't do that when it comes to other things like burglaries or whatever, or mobile phone thefts? Questions do need to be asked. I hope AI will actually be able to solve a lot of this, and we can just tell AI, follow this person stealing the mobile phone and on the CCTV. But we also have, of course, the other problem is we have the youngest police force in history because the Tories got rid of what 2,000 or 20,000 police officers, whatever it was, suddenly had this huge loss of experience. So they're rehiring, they're hiring lots of new police detectives, but they're all wet behind the ears. They're all inexperienced and they didn't learn things on the job. They're all university graduates.
Yeah.
So the old type of detective that learned things on the street and had a sound for it, they've all gone. And you've got these new graduates talking about critical race theory and gender ideology who are the new detectives and they don't have the experience.
Exactly right. Yeah, we've got some questions to ask the police. They've got, if they don't investigate burglaries, what's the point of them? There are so many crimes there. Shoplifting, they seem to feel, is beneath them. Street robbery, violence on the streets, phone theft, all of these crimes that are happening. Phone thieves striking every 6 minutes in London. The police seem to have decided it's beneath them. If they're not going to tackle crime, if they're not going to investigate and solve crimes, there is no point to them. As you allude to, Rafe, my fear is while they're not tackling or solving crimes, they're busy recording non-crime hate incidents and chasing people who might have posted hurty words on social media, and neither of which are very important. So they should get their priorities straight. Last question, Rafe. Betrayal of the strivers. Millions of Brits working very, very hard, getting up crack of dawn to put food on their kids' tables, to keep a roof over their families' heads, just working their socks off just to get by, really struggling with this cost of living crisis as it gets worse and worse and worse, particularly with a view to the Iranian war, which is making matters even worse. We learned today that while hard workers will continue to struggle, MPs, our lovely MPs in Westminster, will receive a £3,300 cost of living handout to help them in these difficult times, and also benefit claimers, welfare people, are about to land themselves a 6.2% pay rise. So if you're an MP or you're claiming benefits, Bob's your uncle. You're in good shape. But if you're not, you're not. This is the sort of thing that makes people very angry, and I can understand why, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, MPs' salaries were going up to £98,000 because of this, and they're going to increase, I think, to £110,000 by the end of the decade. So their latest pay increase is 5%. Right? Inflation is only 3%. Poor nurses only got 3.3% of an increase. But it's not just them, of course. What we have now is a tale of two countries. We have the hard-working private sector and others who are going about their job, struggling to make ends meet, and they've only had about a 3% increase in pay. And then you've got the public sector, 6%. So if you're on benefits or you're in the public sector or you're an MP, you've got double the rate of growth for your income as you do if you're a hard-working person, part of alarm clock Britain. That's the reality on the ground, I'm afraid to say. And benefit that, the amount of money increasing on benefits is more than the increase in spending on defence. And we can't muster a single ship to go and defend our interests, and yet we're happy to, of course, increase universal credit and other things like that. And also, crazily, getting rid of the two-child benefit cap, which is only going to be an incentive for people to have more children and still not go to work at all. It's absolute madness. We are fast becoming the sickest man in Britain, and I see no end to any of this.
Yes, indeed. Rafe, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Rafe Heidelmanku there, historian, senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. What do you think about that? While you're struggling, MPs are getting a £3,300 a year pay rise, and benefits claimers, those on welfare, are getting a 6.2% pay rise to what they get for not working. How do you feel about that? 03444991000. Next up, let's talk to Ben Habib about Saturday's March of Love against hate, against the far right. Hundreds of thousands of lovies, Guardian readers, virtue signallers gathering to prove how they're full of love. Right-wingers are full of hate. They love everybody, these people who came to this march on Saturday, unless you happen to be Jewish. They're not keen on Jewish people. Bit anti-Semitic, but apart from that, yeah, everybody love togetherness. But, you know, we don't like the Jews. We'll talk about that next. 03444991000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Ben Habib in just a little while on the March of Love, or was it the March of Hate, through London on Saturday? That in a little while. First of all, let's talk about Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader. She's considering adopting two interesting policies, which are basically direct hits on Islamic culture. She is considering the merits of bringing in a burqa ban to combat what she says is Islamic extremism. And she's also looking into banning cousin marriage, as in first cousin marriage among Islamic people, to improve UK social cohesion. She might add to that to decrease the number of babies who are being born with serious birth defects, because that's what first cousin marriage does. It produces a disproportionate number of children with defects, babies with defects. That's why we should make it illegal, but bizarrely it is not. Let's talk to social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ahsan. Welcome, Rakib.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good. Kemi Badenoch, possibly riding a kind of populist wave at the moment. There is a lot of, shall we say, questioning narrative about Islamic practices in this country at the moment, particularly due to those mass prayer sessions we saw a couple of weeks ago, one in Trafalgar Square, 300 male Muslims praying in the square, 30,000 in a park called South Heath Park in Birmingham a couple of days later. So a lot of narrative, a lot of discussion about this at the moment. So it's possible Kemi is riding on the back of that, but she's announced that the Tories are looking into, well, let's do it one by one. First of all, considering the merits of a burqa ban to combat Islamic extremism. Does that make sense to you? Would that be a good idea?
Well, I think, Kevin, we have to make the point that when it comes to banning the burqa, we have to talk about how that would be administered. And I think what would be the motivations behind it. Now, I think that there are very serious challenges we face as a country when it comes to integration. And while the proportion of British Muslim women who wear the burqa is very small, there are concerns there in terms of it being a barrier to integration. I think there'd be many people who would say that when it comes to having effective communication in public, seeing another person's facial expressions is quite important in order to facilitate that. And I think there's also security considerations that could be made on this front as well. And crucially, when it comes to the burqa, for example, we have Muslim majority countries such as Morocco. For some time, the manufacturing, marketing and sale of the burqa has been banned.
Tunisia as well.
Precisely.
There's quite a few Muslim countries, ban the burqa.
And indeed, so in some ways, the Middle Eastern and North African countries, they see it as a way of ultimately pushing back on various forms of extremism. You could say Salafist ideology, for example, it is seen as a way of doing that. So I think that we can always have a debate in terms of how this is administered, how it will be done. But I think that we have to say that we have to think in terms of how do we improve integration outcomes in the country. And I think Kemi Badenoch is very much aware that the Tories were in power for 14 years and they left us with no meaningful national integration strategy. And I think she's looking to address that.
Indeed. Well, on the other announcement she's made is that the Tories are looking into banning cousin marriage, as in first cousin marriage. She says to improve UK social cohesion. If it was just down to social cohesion, I don't think I would have any particular strong views on it. I mean, go ahead as far as I'm concerned. However, in a modern country, which Britain is supposed to be, there are serious medical problems here, that children are far more likely to be born with birth defects if they are the result of first cousin marriages. So if we, by not banning these marriages, by allowing them to continue to be legal, we are increasing the probability of more and more children with defects being born. So that is why I would suggest that we ought to think about banning first cousin marriage for medical reasons and for the sake of the children it produces.
Well, I think that what we have to say is, in a way, Kevin, we should have been having this debate decades ago.
Yeah.
Where this was already a problem, especially in parts of the country such as Bradford, and now it still is a problem. Now, there are signs of improvement in terms of certain communities, the younger generations born and raised in the UK, looking to get away from this particular practice or custom, whatever you would like to call it. But there's no doubt that there's elevated levels of likelihood of birth defects and genetic conditions which are associated with consanguinity. And we have to be honest about that. I think that crucially, there's also the issue we've talked a great deal in the past, Kevin, about grooming gangs. How we've had some multi-generational networks across the country, ultimately characterized by forms of secrecy and protection. They've been reinforced by first cousin marriages. So I think that there's definitely something to be said from an integration and public health perspective. I think, again, though, it's ultimately a matter of how do you administer this? Now, ultimately, you're going to be knocking on people's houses, demanding DNA tests and all the rest of it. So I think what it is, I think in principle, I think many people can say, no, we really need to be getting away from this and addressing it. But I think we also have to have that tougher debate in terms of how do we administer this and how would this actually work in terms of policy and practice.
And by the way, on a personal level, a personal basis, I don't like the idea of banning people from following their religious faiths. In terms of the burqa, I don't like the notion of telling women what they can and cannot wear, but I do think there are higher principles involved that might justify the banning of that clothing item. And the same for first cousin marriage. For me, it's a medical issue, but perhaps if you do ban it, it's better for social cohesion. But mainly, I don't see how, in all conscience, we can continue to allow these kind of marriages to happen legally when we know there's a high probability that they're going to produce children with defects. Government should do something about that. It's as simple as that. Rakib, great to talk to you as always. Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Rakib Ahsan, their social policy analyst. What do you think, folks? Should we ban the burqa? Should we ban first cousin marriages? For the reasons I've just suggested, you may have other reasons. Let me know. 03444991000, or maybe you don't think we should ban them. Let me know. Next up, we'll talk to Ben Habib, as I say, about Saturday's March of Love. Well, according to some people who were there wasn't a whole lot of love around, but there was a whole lot of hate, mainly for Israel and Jewish people. Let's talk about that next. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Oh.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the march, the Together Alliance rally on Saturday, snaking through central London, policed by hundreds of Met Police coppers. It was an anti-far right, anti-Islamophobia. That's what they called it. They didn't mention anti-Semitism, funnily enough. They didn't invite any major Jewish organisations to join in this unity, this united bid for love and against hate. Yeah, they were full of love for everything, but not very full of love for Israel, where they were chanting about Gaza, the Republic. They were pro-Gaza, pro the Islamic Republic of Iran. They were calling for the one-state solution, get rid of Israel altogether. Jihad, from the river to the sea, free Palestine, etc., etc., etc. Well, let's first of all introduce my guest for this section. That's the leader of Advance UK, Ben Habib. Ben, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Before we talk, our reporter Samara Gill went to the march on Saturday, and here's some of the footage that she shot.
They don't care about humanity, they only care. They don't care about Jews, they just care about weaponising our trauma, weaponising our grief, weaponising our identities to push their own agenda, which is essentially just an imperialist, supremacist agenda that puts everyone in a vulnerable and unsafe position, even Jews. You know, Zionism can't exist without the existence of anti-Semitism because it can only legitimise itself through
Doesn't it just mean a state of Israel?
Anti-Semitism. Sorry?
Doesn't it just mean the right for Israel to exist?
That was what was told to Jews at the beginning so that they could give it legitimacy. Before the Holocaust, Jews did not support the state of Israel. Jews wanted to be safe in the countries that they lived in. There was a huge movement. The biggest social democratic movement in the USSR was an anti-Zionist Jewish movement, and that whole history has been wiped out to support Zionism.
Well, there's one example, Ben. That woman talking about Jews as if they're zoo animals or something. Yeah, the Jews want that. The Jews, they didn't want a country. The Jews didn't want a country. They just wanted to be safe. The Jews, the Jews, the Jews, as if they're sort of semi-humans. And what Samara was saying was that this display of mass love scratched away the surface, and it was the display of mass hatred towards Israel and indeed towards Jewish people. Just before we get your comment, this is our friend MP Zara Sultana, part of Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party outfit. She's an extremely far left extremist. Here she is with her thoughts.
Look around you. We are the majority. This country belongs to us. So yes, we will defeat them at the ballot box, but when necessary, we fight them in the streets as well. Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. The choice is clear. It is socialism or barbarism, and we must choose socialism.
Socialism or barbarism? That's good, isn't it? Observers who was there, including Samara, said that the level of ignorance about what's actually going on in the Middle East, the level of ignorance about the issues affecting the Jewish state, Israel, and its surrounding countries, its surrounding peoples. She said the levels of ignorance were frightening. These people don't know anything. They just have a sort of vague belief that, socialism, anti-Semitism, and open borders are all good, and anybody who says anything else, like yourself, like Nigel Farage, maybe even like people like me, we are just full of hate and we need to be destroyed. That's what that march was about. It wasn't healthy at all, Ben.
I mean, fundamentally, at the heart of these people's ideology is a hatred of the United Kingdom. That's what really drives them. And that translates into hating everything which is good about our past, our people, and indeed our allies. When you talk about the level of ignorance, of course, they're entirely ignorant. The only democratically settled state in the Middle East is Israel. Hamas rules Gaza with an iron fist. The problems in Gaza are very, very significantly down to Hamas. And the issues in Lebanon are very significantly down to another bloomin' awful terrorist group called Hezbollah. And all of these people have been financed by the theocracy, which is another dictatorship in Iran. And yet they will support these awful terrorist groups, the IRGC being one of them, which we should prescribe as a terrorist group, claiming that they're somehow supporting peace socialism, as Zara Sultana was banging on about. What they're actually supporting is a collective that stands against the interests of the United Kingdom and the culture, frankly, of this country. What's very interesting, Kevin, which some of your viewers may hear for the first time, is that the government has no settled definition of what far left is. It has the definition of left-wing anarchist single-issue terrorism, but it hasn't got a collective term for the people that were gathering on Sunday. They do, however, define what far right is. They define far right as cultural nationalists. So anyone who believes in a culture, a unified culture for the United Kingdom, something that would bring peace in this country, that would settle our people, anyone who believes in a unified culture for the United Kingdom is described by the government as far right. In fact, the reality is that if you want to define society, if you want to define a nation state, you have to have a unified culture, a common language, a common understanding of who you are based on your history, a common religion, perhaps, and so on. And it's these people who stand against the existence, frankly, of the United Kingdom, and then cloak themselves in a flag of unity, hope, peace. It's all lies.
Yeah,
they stand against this country.
Absolutely. There are something like 500 groups affiliated to the Together Alliance, including lots of lovey showbiz people like Lenny Henry, Steve Coogan, Charlotte Church, you name them, they're all there, the usual suspects. Plus unions, plus various organisations. The one kind of organisation that wasn't invited to join the demo on Saturday were Jewish organisations. There were a few perfunctory ones, Jewish socialists and groups like that, Jews for Palestine, those kind of minor organisations that don't frankly make much sense. But the main organisation, we had a representative of the Jewish Leaders Association on the show on Friday. They were not invited. The campaign against anti-Semitism.
Well, it's anti-Semitic. These marches are anti-Semitic. They should call it for what it is. They try and, again, hide what they really mean by saying that, they stand against the dictatorial terrorist state of Israel. Israel, as I've just mentioned, is a democratically settled country. It protects itself robustly, as it has to. But these people are anti-Semitic. There's no doubt about it. The other bizarre thing about it, Kevin, is that senior politicians, Andy Burnham, Dawn Butler, Sadiq Khan, they all address this crowd as if what this crowd was chanting is acceptable by mainstream politics. It should not be acceptable. These people should be shut down. And they would categorize the gatherings of pro-British marchers. Anyone who got together happened to, predominantly be white, be from across the rest of the United Kingdom. They would categorize them as far right and shut us down immediately.
It's ridiculous. As I say, the mission statement of this march was a march, a demonstration, a protest against the far right and Islamophobia. Think about that. That was the mission statement. No mention of something we've got a massive problem with right now, anti-Semitism. Just Islamophobia and the far right. And that says it all, Ben. It says it all. I've got to move on, but great to have you on the show as always. We'll see you later in the week, Ben. Thank you so much. Ben Habib there, leader of the Advanced UK Party. What do you think about what happened in London on Saturday? I saw some of it. Usual old rubbish, from the river to the sea, free, free, Palestine, death, death to the IDF, and so on and so forth. Not a lot of love in all of those slogans, right? Was that anti-Semitism we saw? Hatred of Israel, hatred of Jews. That woman talking about the Jews as if they were semi-humans, commodities. Oh, well, the Jews, they didn't want a country. They just wanted to be safe, the Jews. I mean, come on. Come on. I think we know what we saw on Saturday. It was a march against hate, full of hate. 0344 499 1000. When we come back, we're going to talk about the BBC with a campaign director at Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. We need to talk about what the hell has happened with Scott Mills. Until this morning, the host of just about the biggest show on all of the BBC, certainly the biggest radio show by a mile, the BBC 2, the Radio 2 breakfast show. Used to get 9 million listeners during Chris Evans's days. I think it's come down a lot, but it's still on about 7 or 6 million. Massive show, huge show. He's getting £350,000 a year. Complaint goes in last Tuesday. He's gone, just gone. BBC not telling us why, of course, but it's another guy in a very senior position who perhaps the BBC should have been a damn sight more careful about. I give you Hugh Edwards, I give you Jimmy Savile, I give you Rolf Harris, I give you Greg Wallace, and of course Hugh Edwards, mainly Hugh Edwards, and now Scott Mills has gone under very, very dubious circumstances. The BBC, of course, always a secretive citadel where they keep the truth from the people who are forced to pay 180 quid for it, as in you and me, licence fee payers. They're not saying much. It's just an issue of personal conduct. What personal conduct? Tell us. You owe it to us. We pay for you. Don't keep secrets from us. We'll talk about that next. 0344 499 1000. See you in a minute.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to campaign director at Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Kevin.
Got any theories as to why Scott Mills has gone? I mean, we're being told now, not by the BBC, of course, but we're being told that his sudden dismissal this morning, only 6 days after he was suspended for a specific campaign, a specific complaint, which the BBC was to do with, BBC said was to do with personal conduct. Well, we're learning now it may be to do with a historic male relationship that he had with another guy that ended 10 years ago. So the mind boggles. If it was to do with a relationship that ended 10 years ago, and something cropped up about that relationship last Tuesday and is gone by today, I mean, the mind boggles. What was it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is we won't know, will we? Because the BBC thinks it's acceptable just to say no comment and that we don't comment. But as you said earlier before the ads there, you know, this isn't a one-off incident. So you've got a huge long list of so-called talent from the BBC that have gone under similar circumstances. And obviously this is alleged against Scott Mills, but the BBC really needs to get a grip on it. It's just not okay to be kind of, we don't comment. Absolutely, you must comment, because, you know, they bully the British public into paying for them, and therefore they are answerable. And it's, you know, it's just not okay.
This guy was earning £360,000 a year. It is, you know, genuinely probably one of the top 3 broadcasting jobs on the BBC. This is not just any job. This is the biggest show in BBC radio, in British radio, actually, in all of Britain's radio, hosting the Radio 2 breakfast show when our Chris Evans, who's here with us now, Virgin, when he used to do it, 9 million listeners, massive audience. I think it still gets 6 or 7 million listeners. So this is a huge show. And the BBC, we don't comment on personal matters. Well, we pay for the BBC. This millions of people. This is integral to their mornings. The BBC's impulse to secrecy, it's not good enough here. You know, I don't expect them to give us every spit and comma, but I think licence fee payers who are forced to pay 180 quid a year for the state broadcaster have a right to know why this key broadcaster has suddenly gone. Apparently when it was announced at the BBC, there were gasps of shock in the newsroom, and this is being described as the biggest shock departure since Hugh Edwards, and that's about right.
And that was fairly recently, wasn't it, Kevin? That's the thing, is only, you know, we're mere months ago, Hugh Edwards, not years. So, and this is what they really need to get a grip on at the BBC, is that is he going to be continued to be paid whilst this is investigated? You know, because we saw the issues with Hugh where he was continued to be paid, and then that money has not been returned to the BBC, let alone to British taxpayers who are forced to pay for it. And this is what we see, you know, in the charter review that's underway at the moment, where the BBC has suggested that actually, can we just get rid of the charter review, because, you know, it upsets us because we have to, you know, actually be answerable once every 7 years, and they really don't like that. It just puts too much pressure on them. And this is why we would say absolutely we can't get rid of the charter review, and let's just scrap the TV licence altogether, because we shouldn't be forced to pay for this.
Yeah, I tell you what we shouldn't be forced to pay for is this kind of production line, ongoing, never-ending production line of huge incompetence. You know, it's difficult to choose the right people for key jobs, and you can make a mistake. We'll all accept that. But with the BBC, it seems to be their hobby. You know, that every single time, as I just said, you got Jimmy Savile, you got Rolf Harris, you got Greg Wallace, Hugh Edwards, of course, now Scott Mills. All of these men given very key roles at the state broadcaster, and all of them leaving in disgrace, because clearly the decision process which led to them landing these key roles was flawed, was rubbish. And that's what this new Director General, Matt Britton, I mean, he's already got this first scandal, this massive problem to deal with, and he hasn't even started yet. So he needs to get the selection process worked out. Something needs to happen about that. Meanwhile, a couple of words from you, if you don't mind, Rebecca. Also with the BBC, we've learnt today that it's basically disbanding its department that deals with the coverage of official state visits, state events, royal events, you know, the investiture of the Archbishop of Canterbury, that kind of stuff that is a bit boring to watch, but it's the sort of thing the BBC should be covering. They're going to reduce that department to one person. They're probably going to contract out this kind of coverage in the future if we get it at all. But the BBC will, of course, remain very committed to sending 550 staff every year to the Glastonbury pop concert to give us 24/7 pop music coverage. 550 staff, costs us millions. It's grotesque and it's wrong, isn't it, the way they approach these things?
Yeah, absolutely. They've completely lost sight of what they're actually supposed to be doing, what they're meant to be taking BBC licence fee money, and what they're meant to be, covering these national moments. You can't be a national broadcaster and not cover those national moments. And actually, we find with our supporters, one of the things that they do struggle to let go of their TV licence for those live TV moments of things that you're talking about, those sort of the cenotaph and royal moments. And if the BBC just sort of contracts that out, is that we're not going to get value for money there either, are you? And as you say, they still love to send those 550 people to woke Mecca that is Glastonbury. It's an outrage.
Look, I've been covering, I was saying this earlier in the show, Rebecca, I've been covering the BBC throughout my long and checkered career, and they've always been like this. They seem to think they have the right to take our money, the plebs and serfs around the country who are forced to pay £180 for this substandard broadcasting service. And then they seem to feel they have the right to keep secrets from us, just as they kept secrets about Jimmy Savile, they kept secrets about Rolf Harris, about Greg Wallace, Hugh Edwards, and now Scott Mills. They've got to stop this, as you say. They cannot just keep secrets when they take our money. They owe us transparency, and they've done it again. While we do not comment on matters relating to individuals, we can confirm Scott Mills is no longer contracted to work with the BBC. That is inadequate. That is just not good enough, is it?
It's absolutely not. It's not acceptable at all. Like you say, the BBC must be answerable to the British people that are forced to pay for it. And for them to just sort of try and palm it off, it's just so patronising as well, isn't it? And it's so sort of, they circle the wagons every time something like this happens, and they feel that they can get away with it, but it's not acceptable. And we see that droves of people are getting rid of the TV licence. As long as they don't watch any live broadcast TV, they don't have to fund this. And that's what the pressure we need to bring to bear on the BBC.
Yeah, remember, I don't listen to the Radio 2 breakfast show, as you might imagine, but 5 or 6 million people do, 7 million, I think, on a good day. This is very important to them. This is how they start their day. And the BBC goes, oh, that guy who's hosting it, he's not going to be hosting it anymore. He's gone. Personal conduct, can't say too much. Well, yes, you can. I don't expect them to give us every spit and comma, all the sordid details, but they owe us more than this is personal conduct. They think they can get away with this, and this new Director General hopefully can change this culture of secrecy, this cover-up culture that continues to get our state broadcaster into terrible trouble time after time after time again. No doubt, I'm going to predict now, probably this new Director General, because this is the way it is with Director Generals, will be useless. And everybody in the BBC will say, he's brilliant, like they always do. We've got to get off this merry-go-round. We really have. I've had enough of it. Rebecca, really good to talk to you, as always. What a pleasure. Thank you so much. Campaign Director at Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. Tell me what you think about this. Don't you think we have a right to know why the DJ, the host of the biggest show on the BBC, the Radio 2 breakfast show, has been suddenly sacked? And they're not giving us the details. We should know something more about it. 0344 499 1000. James Price next. Stay around. We'll join you after the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It's the second hour of today's drive time. Of course, in a little while, we'll be trying to work out why the police only solved 8% of burglaries last year. 92% they didn't solve, which is ridiculous, isn't it? Whole swathes of the country, a third of the country, there were no burglaries solved at all by the police. Begging the question, what are the police for? 03444991000. Let me know what you think about Scott Mills, the Radio 2 Breakfast Show DJ, getting the sack, the tin tack summarily this morning. Gone, but certainly not forgotten, because we want to know why. Why has he gone? This is a big show, huge show. Suddenly he's fired. Complaints last Tuesday, apparently. He was taken off the air then, has gone today forever. Something to do, we're told, with the relationship he had with a guy. He's married to a new guy now, but a relationship he had 10 years ago, which some sort of relationship with a guy that broke up acrimoniously. We're told it might be something to do with that. In other words, it's historical. But it does, you think, well, hang on. Something to do with a relationship that ended 10 years ago. Somebody said something last Tuesday and now he's gone. Well, what was it? 03444991000. Let's go straight over to my next guest. He is the former Conservative advisor, special advisor, James Price. Welcome, James.
Hello, my friend. It's great to be with you.
Good to have you on the show. It's just the day to have you. Well, first of all, let's take a look at... So this is the Green Party leader, Zach Polansky, and his new partner in crime, the new MP for Gorton and Denton, the Green MP, Hannah Spencer. She used to be a plumber, you know. She doesn't like to talk about it, but I can reveal she was a plumber. She keeps that under her hat as much as Keir Starmer keeps it a secret that his dad used to be a toll maker. Anyway, this is Zach and Hannah at the Together Alliance March on Saturday, the march against the far right and Islamophobia, the march for love, not hate. Here they are.
Who is here for love, unity, solidarity? And who is here for DJ, Gorton and Dean?
That's, James, that's what you want from your MPs. What do you think of the threat of World War III, the cost of living crisis, law and order in this country? New MP, Ms Spencer. Well, what I think is oggy, 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 oi, oi, oi. What was going on there? I mean, those two, that is the leader of a political party and an MP in Britain's House of Representatives, the mother of all parliament. Who do they think they are? Like two-bit minor celebrity pop stars or something?
Every day we fall further from God's light. I mean, dear me.
I thought you'd like this.
I've got a proposition for Mr. Polansky. No, not like that. But I've got a proposition for him. I will vote for the Green Party. I'll stand for election. I'll knock on doors for them. If the next time he gets up on stage with his little mate the plumber and with the people next to him, those who are listening to this on the radio and not watching live, there's a man next to Zach Polansky wearing what I think can charitably be described as fetish bondage gear.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
And I think there are a few more other fetish bondage gear aficionados up on stage. And I think I'm looking now, it's reasonable to suggest that they are dancing leading from the hips. I think it would be a conservative description of saying. I will vote for the Green Party if the next time all these blokes in the fetish kit get up on stage and they dance with Zach Polanski's deputy leader, Mothin Ali, and his wife who wears
yeah, that's right.
I just can't quite see the newly found enthusiasts for the Green Party up in Leeds Hare Hills, Mothin Ali, the deputy leader, who, when he won his council seat nearly 2 years ago, screamed Allahu Akbar and talks almost exclusively about Gaza, with a side order of being really interested in the Houthis. He's a big fan of the Houthis, is the deputy leader of the Green Party, and says actually the Houthis are upholding international shipping and maritime legal obligations. And his wife, wearing, as she does, the full niqab, if they get up on stage and dance alongside the other bit of the Green Party, which are the fetish-wearing bondage gear enthusiasts, then I will think, yep, you've got a sustainable coalition. I might even vote for you. How's that for a deal, Kev?
Yeah, I think it's a good deal, James, but don't bet the farm on it actually happening. Now, with a view to this outpouring of love that we saw in London on Saturday, I was down in town and it wasn't an outpouring of love. If anything, it was. This is confirmed by our reporter Samara Gill, who was down there shooting footage. It was an outpouring of anti-Semitism, of hatred of Israel, pro-Iran, pro-Gaza, free Palestine from the river to the sea, death to the IDF. It wasn't an outpouring of love, it was an outpouring of hate, which, considering it was supposed to be a march against hate, is quite surprising. And of course its mission statement was, join us at the Together Alliance on Love. This is a march against the far right and against Islamophobia. Ends. It didn't say against anti-Semitism. That's because it seemed to be, from what we can see, pro-anti-Semitism. With a view to this, a leading light in the Green Party, a bigger activist guy, a woman called Tope Alawoin. She has liked, she shared a post on social media which called the attack on the ambulances in Golders Green in North London, the Jewish ambulances, the firebomb attack, destroying 4 ambulances for the local community. She called it an inside job. And the suggestion from Tope and her pals is that the Jews set fire to their own ambulances in order to curry favour and to fester hatred against the Islamic community. That's what people like Tope think. They did it themselves. Your thoughts?
It's tough to know even where to start with this, isn't it? I mean, it is extraordinary that we have now had years and years and years of people screaming the word racist at everybody, for everything, for every reason. I was looking in this morning for something I'm planning on writing of some of the sillier examples. And do you remember how the countryside is racist?
Oh, of course, yeah.
And dogs are racist, and smiling is racist, and all, everything under the sun can now be labelled as racist. Water, probably, breathing, definitely you and me and everybody listening and everybody watching and everybody who's ever owned the television or got a pair of hands or whatever. And yet the same people who do this are also those who are actually really, really racist when it comes to Jewish people. It is extraordinary. As the good book says, you notice the mote in your neighbour's eye rather than the log in your own eye. And it is almost at this point you've got to just laugh. They are this ridiculous. And it's clever at least that moving on from the magic grandpa Jeremy Corbyn, they've at least found in Zach Polanski someone who gets to say, well, I'm Jewish, so I'm able to say all of these sorts of things, which I don't think is a terribly good defence. And then he went off, I think he even said, oh, I'm the only Jewish person ever to lead a political party, forgetting, of course, Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli in the 19th century, and Herbert Samuel, the Liberal Party, and Michael Howard here, and Jimmy Goldsmith, and I'm probably missing some others as well. But it suggests that perhaps he doesn't have the best and deepest and most heartfelt grasp of his own Jewish identity, and is being used perhaps, at least in some way, by some of the people around him, like the woman you just mentioned, as a bit of a useful idiot with an emphasis on the second syllable or second word. And this kind of idea that Jewish people would go and set fire to their own ambulances, set fire to their own properties, attack themselves, these kind of false flag things. This is just classic anti-Semitism, and you may not experience some of this in your daily life, but I've got one of my best friends coming over to stay with me tomorrow from the United States, and he's Jewish. He's about as secular as you can get, and once laughed that his grandfather was a wonderful Jew because he brings the ham every Christmas. And yet I'm just wondering, when my friend lands tomorrow, am I going to have to warn him? Am I going to have to say, mate, just like don't act too
shout. I mean, you
right?
are, James, though, aren't you? You are. Don't shout. You're going to have to say to your friend, I'm sure he wouldn't do this, but just in case, don't go around shouting about being Jewish. You know, as Gideon Falter found out from the campaign against anti-Semitism, the chief executive of that great organisation, as he tried to cross the road once, a copper stopped him and said, I can't let you do this because there's a pro-Palestine demonstration going on across the road and you are clearly openly Jewish, as if being Jewish or openly or otherwise is some kind of offence. That is the increasingly the presiding attitude that we have in marches like we saw on Saturday. We know there's 500 organisations involved in the Together Alliance and loads of lovies, Lenny Henry, Steve Coogan, Charlotte Church, you know, all the Billy Bragg, you know, all the usual suspects, plus the unions, various organisations, all invited to take part. They didn't invite any major Jewish organisations to participate. Make of that what you will.
But they did, by the way, invite the Muslim Council of Britain and their friends,
exactly, of course, yeah.
and all these groups who, but they're not even representative of mainstream British Islam. The Muslim Council of Britain have had a de facto ban on any official government involvement going back to 2009 and the last Labour government because of their dangerous extremist ways. Doesn't stop a lot of the backbench nutters in the Labour Party, and I'm sure they'll be on some kind of steering board for the Greens any day now. But those are the kind of wrong-uns that have been invited and been involved in this march. So let's not have any of this, oh, we're here to love and all the rest of it. They are a group who are, or groups who are full of hate. And just in case, if you just think that, you know, as I hear some people on the very online right say, oh, why is everyone always going on about anti-Semitism? What about anti-white this? What about anti all the rest of it? Even if you are of that mindset, which I think is the wrong way to look at it, obviously, when they're done with the Jews, they're not going to stop there. They'll go for everybody else afterwards, right? And this is the problem. The Jews end up always in every society being the canary in the coal mine. And if that's the case, then we are in a lot of trouble, given the way they've been treated in recent years by the Labour Party and now by the Greens.
Well said, James. Now, I want to ask you about this MP's pay rise, plus the fact that benefits claimants as of today get a 6.2% pay rise. We'll talk about that in a little while. Just want to briefly get your take on the big news story of the day. I'm sure you're not a massive listener to Radio 2's Breakfast Show, but it is the biggest show on the BBC. Gets 7 million or so listeners every single day. Huge audience, massive job. Suddenly, the host, Scott Mills, £360,000 a year he was earning. Suddenly today, he's been sacked. He was taken off air as of last Wednesday, following some kind of complaint to his employers about his behaviour, his conduct. And now he's been fired for it. Now, before I get your take on it, this is the kind of scene you'll never see again. It's quite heartbreaking, really. This is Scott Mills making a cameo appearance in EastEnders, and this was put forward as a flash-forward episode for New Year's Day 2027. So this has been on, but it was a projection of what they think might be on EastEnders at the beginning of 2027. Well, it ain't going to be now. Take it away.
How's 2027 going for you? Time for some messages. Max Branning, good luck on your wedding day. Wow, says here 5th time lucky. And that's from Oscar, hotter than ever in 2027. I'm guessing you wrote that yourself, Oscar. And that one's also from Lauren too.
Well, that, James, is the voice of Scott Mills, and that is not going to be on the BBC ever again, and they'll be regretting that he was ever on EastEnders because he's suddenly gone. Now, the BBC has just said, oh, it's personal conduct. Apparently, it's something to do with a relationship he had 10 years ago, but something happened last Tuesday with a view to this relationship, we're being told, a historical complaint that was so heinous, he's gone. That's it. gone. BBC saying it's personal conduct, we don't comment on this. They owe us an explanation. This is important to 7 million listeners. You can't just say we don't comment on this sort of thing.
Well, I can see the images of the guy in question on the screen right now. I've got to say, it's the first time I've ever heard of him, so maybe I'm a little bit out of touch. And if there are 7 million people still listening to the BBC every morning, then maybe the previous story about the Greens rising in popularity makes a little bit more sense. But this is a morning show, right? This guy does.
Breakfast show.
Well,
Huge show.
You personally, Kev, don't start broadcasting until what, 4 in the afternoon? So you've got time to do this job as well. You can take over.
Good idea. Actually, for £360,000 a year, funnily enough, I am available. But
you are right. You're right on the broad point, right? That the BBC is funded by licence fee payers, has different rules from everybody else, and the way that they manage to moralise and prognosticate all over the place, and yet seem to support so many clear wrong-uns. Let's not forget about Hugh Edwards as the latest in a long line of wrong-uns that have been defended by that organisation. I think at the very least we should be entitled to know what's going on if you're a taxpayer. Maybe if you're a licence fee payer, you get texted or emailed what the details of the story are, like some kind of interactive, salacious story as a way to try and
have a competition.
Failing TV licence fee numbers.
Yeah, competition. The winners get to find out the secrets that the BBC is keeping from them. How about that one? They always do it. But as I said earlier, I do think the BBC, they've got a new Director General. This is a massive headache for him. And the poor guy hasn't even started yet. His name's Matt Britton. What he needs to look at is what's going wrong, because every single time, every day in every way, we learn of some other senior BBC staff, a senior presenter, showbiz type person who's been given a very, very key role in the BBC, and they're clearly wrong-uns. Why does the BBC keep making this same mistake? That's the question we have a right to answer. Before you go, though, James, let's get your take. When you were in government, I bet you would have railed against this because it's such a bad look. Well, people are struggling with the cost of living crisis very, very badly. Loads of people around the country who get up at the crack of dawn, work their backsides off to keep food on their kids' tables, roof over their families' homes, keep the car running, maybe get one holiday, really working hard. And they're getting nothing for it. They learned today that MPs are about to get a £3,300 a year pay rise, and possibly more galling. Benefits claimants will, as of this week, get a 6.2% pay rise in what they receive. Now, that if you were working in government, wouldn't you say, look, this is a terrible look, let's not do this now?
Yeah, it is absolutely a terrible look. And I appreciate the argument that says that there will always be a controversial story every time MPs' pay goes up, and that people will be tempted, MPs and ministers and all the rest will be tempted to use it for politicking no matter which side they're on. And therefore that's why it's been taken out and put into the hands of an independent body. I can see the sort of very narrow bit of logic behind that. The problems, of course, are obvious, though. I think that when you do this and your salary goes up against inflation and whatever else, regardless of how the effects of the decisions of the legislation that you're passing and the policies that you're enacting are, you're not incentivized necessarily to do that very well. So I would have a situation where MPs and ministers are paid according to how the economy is going. You know, you might start to see the alignment of incentives a little better there. The economy goes up and gets bigger and grows, and more people are in work and more people are creating and grafting and all the rest of it. MPs get more money. If there's a recession, then MPs' pay goes down. That seems to me a perfectly smart way to align these things. And the other thing that should be said that will make me less popular, having just bashed them a little bit, is that I think that as a general rule, members of parliament are not paid nearly enough for what we would want to see in the quality of members of parliament. In previous generations, 100 years ago, 200 years ago or whatever, MPs often tended to be people of means, and therefore they didn't need to vote in their own narrow self-interests. They were able to vote in the sort of interests of the country or whatever else. Well, we have a House of Lords and a hereditary principle for a long time, that people could therefore take the long view and not worry about these things. But as we've got at the moment, if you do pay peanuts, well, quite a lot of monkeys sitting on those green benches, isn't there? Exactly. So I think that, in general, have you had MPs being paid a higher salary, it might attract a higher quality of politician who would come along, who in turn would be able to improve the economy, which would help everybody else out.
Well, we could debate this. I know your point. I'm not entirely convinced by that argument, but we certainly have a problem with the quality of our MPs. And I think what's more annoying, though, is that arbitrarily almost suddenly the government is going to pay 6.2% more to benefits claimants. They don't have to do that right now. I mean, they'll say, oh, it's to do with inflation and we've got to, be across rising cost of living and all that. But 6.2% when people working very hard aren't getting anything, that is not going to go down well, is it?
No, absolutely not. And again, this goes to the very heart of why economic growth is as crucial as it is. It sounds really abstract, right? What does it actually mean? Because people are so used now, we've got almost, 20 years since the financial crash of low growth, if not no growth at all, from politicians and parties of all different stripes. And so people get used to the idea that politics and the money side of things is just a zero-sum game. If you've got money, it means that I can't have money. Whereas the whole point of capitalism and of economic growth is that you can generate more returns for everybody, and everybody benefits in the way that a rising tide lifts all ships. When you don't have that, then things start to get mean and nasty, and taxpayers end up having somehow to magically grow even broader shoulders to pay for those who can't work or won't work. And that's obviously wrong. There's a real moral hazard involved there. Of course, you and I can be amongst the first people to say that those who are in genuine need, if they can't work, or if they're in really bad circumstances, should be looked after. And if you believe that, like you and I do, and I'm sure everybody listening does, you should be even more mad about the amount of money that gets wasted in the welfare system for people who don't need it. Because the best welfare program in the world, as Ronald Reagan said, is a job. And that's what we should be focusing on. Economic growth, jobs for all, and making people stand up on their own 2 feet if they possibly can and look after themselves and their families. And if they can't, then the rest of us won't mind putting our hands in our pockets to look after them.
Well said, James. What a pleasure to have you on the show, as always. James Price there, former Tory political advisor. Now, next up, we're going to talk to Peter Blexley, former Met Police detective, about this extraordinary statistic that The Sun has established in an investigation that last year the coppers failed to solve 92% of burglaries, and across the country, a third of the country, house break-ins were not solved at all. Not a single burglary was solved across a third of the country. The rest of the country, 92% were not solved. So 8% across most of the country, across the third of the country, none solved whatsoever. Begs the question, as I said earlier, doesn't it? Let me know what you think. Give me a call. What is the point of the police? 03444991000. Why aren't the police investigating burglaries? Have you had a break-in? You know, what was your experience of the police response? Usually, most people, you're lucky if you get a crime number out of them. That's it. Why don't the police investigate burglaries? Should they investigate burglaries? 0344 499 1000. And if you're out there working your backside off day after day, getting up at 4 in the morning, working hard, you're dog tired, but you've got to put food on the table for your kids, put a roof over your family's heads, what do you think of the fact that benefits claimants this week who don't do anything are getting a 6.2% pay rise for not working? 0344 499 1000. Give me a call. Let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk. Next up, as I say, we'll discuss why it is that the police are not investigating burglaries. That next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
One last question for you, for you to give me a call about. The BBC licence fee, 180 quid a year now. Is it worth it? Do we really have to keep paying this? We've got another scandal. Major male presenter in deep trouble, suddenly fired for reasons the BBC's been very secretive about. But it is to do with his personal life. It's to do with some relationship from 10 years ago. Something has happened in the last week. Scott Mills, host of the biggest show on the BBC, the Radio 2 breakfast show, suddenly been fired. So yet again, Hugh Edwards, Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Greg Wallace, all these guys, all these people given key roles on the BBC by the state broadcasters, stupid bosses. Why should we have to pay £180,000 a year for these people, this state broadcaster, Auntie Beeb, to keep getting it totally wrong time and time again? Why do we have to pay 180 quid a year just to watch this organisation traipse through scandal after scandal after scandal, because they're all so useless, all the people who work there? 0344 499 1000. Do you want to pay your BBC licence fee anymore? If you're not going to, give me a call, explain why. If you are going to continue paying it, why do you think it's worth it? I'll be very interested to hear that. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk about cops now. This is an amazing story. Well, let's go straight over to my next guest and discuss it. Former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley. Welcome, Pete.
Good evening.
The Sun newspaper, amazing investigation, has established that over the past year, 92% of all burglaries in Britain, house break-ins, were not solved. And across a third of the country, not a single burglary case was cracked. Not a single solving of any burglary across a third of the country. Across the rest of the country, only 8% solved. Meanwhile, across the country, less than 1% of phone thefts led to a suspect being charged. So these crimes going across, in terms of burglaries, nearly 200,000 break-ins last year, 92% not solved. I mean, to say it's not good enough is the understatement of the year. It begs the question, Pete, if they're not going to investigate or try to solve burglaries that affect 200,000 people a year, 200,000 households, what on earth are the police for?
Well, Mr. O'Sullivan, you've absolutely nailed it, because you cannot solve crimes that you do not investigate. It sounds blatantly obvious, and of course, it's a fact. And the police do not investigate these crimes, whether it be burglary or a phone theft. In all reality, you ring up and a call handler says, do you know who committed this crime? Have you got any CCTV? And if your answer to those questions is no, then you'll get an email within about 24 hours saying that the case is closed, and that's the end of it. Now, policing has changed dramatically from my day. What we did, we patrolled the streets and we investigated crime. That were the kind of major things that we did. Now, the police service has turned into the equivalent of the AA or the RAC, and it attends, it attends societal breakdown issues rather than doing what we did. That's what senior bosses have allowed policing to become. That's what they've turned it into. And that is why, if you're a victim of crime, in all likelihood, you're not going to get an investigation. So,
of the 184,783 burglaries investigated in 2025, 143,000 were shut down without a suspect being identified. So that means that last year the police were closing down burglary investigations without finding anyone, without coming anywhere near to solving the crime, at the rate of 393 a day. 393 failed investigations a day. In another 27,500 cases, a suspect was identified but could not be prosecuted. For some reason, they don't say why. And then maybe you can explain this one, even more interesting, Pete. Furthermore, another 400 cases, further action was abandoned because it was deemed to not be in the public interest. What the hell's that all about?
Well, the mind boggles with regards to that. But essentially, there's a level of dishonesty going on here, because when they say the investigation is closed, there's not actually been an investigation. Police officers have not gone to the scene of the crime. They haven't taken a scenes of crimes officer with them. They haven't searched for fingerprints, shoe marks, tool marks. They haven't searched the garden to see, did the burglar drop something like a screwdriver, like a glove, like a balaclava. Burglars can do these things. They can be caught, but you've got to go out there and investigate the crime. And you've got to knock on the neighbours' doors and say, did you see anything suspicious? Go over the road and see the neighbours who live opposite. Did you see anything suspicious? But it doesn't happen because they're too busy with their blue lights on and their sirens going from one 999 call to another. They are a social service. That's what senior bosses have willingly allowed them to become. So there's a huge disconnect from victims of crime, and they wonder why trust and respect for the police is tanking. Quite frankly, it's because they don't care about us.
I think you're right. So 1 in 100 phone theft cases are solved. So effectively that form of crime is decriminalised as well. Now, what police chiefs will say, you know what they'll say. We haven't got enough resources. They've taken too much money away from us. We haven't got enough officers. Meanwhile, you know, and I know, Pete, people around the country know that these coppers who are too busy to investigate burglaries, car thefts, being beaten up in the street, that kind of thing. You just know they'll be spending a lot of time writing down and recording non-crime hate incidents. And you also know they'll be spending a lot of time investigating people who posted hurty, allegedly racist words on social media, neither of which are particularly important. It's a question of priorities, isn't it? They've moved their priorities, the cops, away from the crimes that affect us, and they've moved their priorities into areas that please them, that allow them to signal their virtue. This is wrong.
Absolutely. And you can also guarantee that there will be huge numbers of police officers working from home, working behind a desk, that will be suspended, that will be restricted from public-facing duties because of ongoing investigations. You will know that DEI budgets will be increasing and they will be hiring plenty of those staff. But in their defence, they would say to you, me and your audience, well, actually, policing's changed now because we investigate the crimes that happen behind closed doors, and that in my generation of policing, that very rarely happened. Well, that argument isn't entirely watertight. But that's why the public hold the police in such a low regard in so many areas, because they don't come out to investigate your burglary, your car crime, your phone theft, your bike theft, the shoplifting, and so much more. And consequently, people think, well, the police today just don't care about us.
Yeah, and I think we're all justified in thinking that. Pete, it's great to talk to you as always. Thank you so much for your time. Peter Blexley, the brilliant former Met Police detective. What do you think about it? Have you been burgled? Have you been the victim of the kind of crime that the police seem to think is beneath them? Burglary, car theft, getting beaten up in the street, that kind of thing. Has it happened to you? 03444991000. If it has happened to you, what was the response? Shouldn't the police be investigating burglaries, car thefts, the kind of crimes that affect us, not wasting their time on nonsense about hurty, racist words on social media? or recording non-crime hate incidents. If it's not a crime, it's got nothing to do with the police, right? 03444991000. Next up, we're going to talk about the migrant crisis and the kind of people we're letting into the country. Migrants, young men of dubious backgrounds that we don't know anything about. We're going to give you 2 cases where we could have found out about these guys. We shouldn't have let them in the country, but oh my God, we did. Wait for this after this break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go over to former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Kevin.
Right, let's get your thoughts on this. An Eritrean migrant called Awidin Fikak arrived on the south coast of Britain in the traditional way in an illegal small boat in October 2024. He's with a fellow Eritrean. They're both 27. This guy is called Henok Tekliap. They've come over, made their way here from Denmark. They arrive on the south coast, and as usual, oh yes, come on in. Here's 50 quid a week. Here's a nice hotel you can stay in. Here's free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers, everything we can do for you. And of course, the complaint about this kind of person, Tony, these young men who we let thousands and thousands and thousands in every year. We don't know anything about them. The complaint is, well, who is this guy? What do we know about? Oh, we didn't know anything. Well, that was 2024. It turns out that he was on a list that was being circulated by the Danish police. This is the story particularly of Awidin Fikak. That both these guys were wanted for their alleged part in a gang rape in the Danish city of Aarhus in 2024. They were in fact escaping, allegedly. This was all available, but we let this guy in, and only in the past couple of weeks have we finally cracked the whip and said, wait a minute, this guy is wanted for gang rape, and he's now back. Both of them are now back in Denmark facing trial for their alleged crimes. But why did the British authority, why did they not? What is clear from this, Tony, is that our authorities, the Home Office, are not looking into all of these guys who turn up at all. A cursory check of Awidin Fikak would have proved that he's on this list, that he's wanted for alleged gang rape in Denmark, and yet we didn't do that check. We let him in, we put him in an expensive asylum seeker hotel, we gave him 50 quid a week, we've been giving him free food for the past 2 years, free benefits, free housing he's had throughout this time, and yet he was wanted for gang rape in Denmark. We've finally found out 2 years afterwards, and we've sent him back. But that proves that when people say we don't do enough to check these migrants who come across the channel illegally, they've sure as hell got a point, haven't they?
Yeah, I don't know about you, Kevin. I'm getting increasingly disappointed by the number of stories we're seeing like this, where we have given illegal entrants temporary permission to enter, claiming asylum, small boats usually, who then are either we identify later on down the road they've committed an offence like these two, or they go on and commit offences here. And then we find out something awful that happened overseas. So what should happen at Manston when they come aboard and we're screening them is that we do take detail. Obviously, they've thrown their passports away, Kevin.
Yeah.
Nominal checks are only limited use. What God knows what name he might have given. He might have given it a completely different name. But we are now doing biometric checks. That's facial recognition and fingerprint checks. And we should be sending those biometrics off to Interpol. Now, in this particular case, the Danish police are saying unequivocally, we uploaded that data to the European arrest warrant database. Ergo, we should have caught them, Kevin, because that check should have come back on a fingerprint to say, we know this bloke. A red flag should have gone up at Manston, and they should have been detained and not admitted, but that didn't happen for some reason or other. Now, I think, Kevin, this is an area that is ripe for an investigation. I would certainly have the independent chief inspector of borders and immigration look into this. What checks are we doing? I know we haven't got much time. We've only got 24 hours. Manston is only a short-term holding facility, which is the first problem. I've said repeatedly we need more than 24 hours with an undocumented migrant to conduct a risk assessment. There was a report by the HM Inspector Constabulary last year. I don't know if you remember that, Kevin, but they said that we're not doing enough screening in organised crime groups at Manston. I don't think we are. It's disparate. I would really like to see a review of what check. The people need to know, what checks are we actually doing? Are we waiting for the results? And what are we doing with the individuals in the meantime? Because in my book, this should have come up, Kevin. Yeah. It should have come up on the system. We should have nicked them, and we should have sent them straight back to Denmark, no asylum, and you would not have been admitted in the UK. Thankfully, they did not go on to commit any crimes in this country, but quite a lot of them have been, haven't they?
Exactly right. And Awidin Fikak in particular, we don't know the full details about the other guy, but we do know about what happened with Awidin Fikak. He was investigated for 6 months by the British authorities with a view to whether or not he qualified for full refugee status. So they were looking into him, and then they said, yes, he does qualify. Well, in 6 months, it strikes me, they should have come across the fact that this guy was wanted for alleged gang rape in Denmark, but somehow they didn't. So when we all question whether or not we have a proper vetting system going on here in this country, Tony, about all these young men that arrive from across the channel, it's quite clear that we don't. I would suggest, pure speculation on my part, but I think everyone is just getting waved through because it's too much effort to investigate them.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's the case, because I was back in the Home Office, Kevin, for a little while a couple of years ago. I observed the process in Manston. I can tell you they definitely are all fingerprinted, photographed. Data is collected, and they are held for a limit. The problem is, Kevin, that if you get 300 or 400 a day and you've only got 24 hours to do all this stuff, they are under pressure, because what happens is the Home Office gets sued for unlawful detention. There are ongoing cases now where we are being told you kept this person longer than 24 hours. I would like to keep them for much longer than that to do the screening. The screening is the job of the Border Force, Kevin. The asylum application is completely different. That gets referred to the Asylum Directorate but all of the screening is our responsibility. It should have been the border force that kept this guy, found this stuff and sent him back. And that's what really disappoints me. That's why I think we need a thorough review into all this so people know, well, what screening, what checks are you doing on people who've thrown their passports away deliberately to try and get into the country to make sure they have not committed serious crimes overseas before you let them in. And I'm worried about that process, Kevin. I really am.
Yeah, I think we all should be. I mean, this guy should never have been allowed in. He's allowed in, given full refugee status. They should have found out about him. He's now back in Denmark facing a trial for gang rape. So it's as simple as that. We should have known about this. Tony, very good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Tony Smith, the excellent former head of the UK Border Force there. Next up, Sun Sport with head of sport there, director of sport at the Sun newspaper, Sean Custis. That next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sun Sport, lots to talk about. Sean Custis, Director of Sport at the Sun, is in the studio. We've got England and Spurs. I think we'll do Spurs first because suddenly, Sean, to no one's great surprise, Tottenham grew tired of the services of Igor Tudor and fired him suddenly.
Yeah, it wasn't a very long time to get tired of him, but it clearly wasn't working. 44 days, Igor Tudor gone.
It's
no
a sort
wins,
of Liz Truss of football, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit. Yeah, it just was not a match made in heaven. Look, it was a struggle. It wasn't fitting. It was pretty clear he was going to go after the last game defeat against Forest, but of course he had the sad death of his father, so they did leave it a bit of time. And I think Tudor was probably okay about going as well. Sure, he got a reasonable little payoff to go, and it was actually before even his assistant manager had managed to come over, who was still trying to get a work permit. So so they move on to, and Roberto De Zerbi is the man in the frame. He was fighting shy of going to Spurs until the end of the season because partly he wanted to know what league they'd be in. And also felt he needed a bit of a rest after Marseille. But the thing is, for Spurs, it's got to the point where they say, look, you either do it now or you might not get it in the summer, is pretty much how it is. And also, if you're that good a manager, well, then you'll be able to keep us up, won't you? That's the Spurs attitude. There'll be a handsome bonus if he keeps Spurs in the Premier League. Who would have thought you'd get a handsome bonus for keeping Spurs in the Premier League? And of course, he was very successful at Brighton for quite a long period of time until he fell out with the board. And he was pretty successful at Marseille in his first season there, until it went a bit wonky this season after they got beat 5-0 by PSG.
Who's in the front? I mean, when might he take? You don't think he'll take over until close season then? Or?
Oh no, he's going to.
He's going to do it now.
They're hopeful that he'll do it now because they want somebody to take over now for the long term. And as I say, if he thinks he's a good enough manager, and they do, well, then he's good enough to keep them in the Premier League, and it shouldn't worry him the danger of them being relegated. And anyway, even if they were relegated, he should be good enough to bring them back up again. Look, he's not somebody who hangs around for a long period of time, as a rule, at a club, but he did make a good impact at Brighton. When he went to Brighton, he actually lost, I think it was his first 5 games.
Yeah,
he struggled with the language. It was a bit of everything, but he sharp picked things up, and he was a pretty inspirational figure for quite some time until, as I say, fell out with the board a bit over transfer policy and left. But he's a highly rated manager, young manager, you would say, 46. And maybe just what Spurs need. Do you certainly kick a few backsides, and a few backsides need kicking?
Yeah, they certainly do.
And I know you're not a huge fan of Spurs, but it'll be. You can't deny that it's going to be fun watching if they can survive this.
I'm not a huge fan of Spurs. It would be great fun to watch them in the Championship.
In that stadium.
As we always chant at Craven Cottage, say hello to QPR. Right, let's... when we beat Spurs 2-1 so recently, they were pretty dire.
It's hello to Lincoln City is the big joke, isn't it, for Spurs? Because if they get relegated and Lincoln are certain to be promoted from League One, that's the game.
Spurs playing Lincoln in the league. It doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
Amazing.
Let's talk about England. Very dreary one-off friendly.
How do you know it was dreary,
well,
Kevin? Because you read all the reports.
I watched the highlights.
What were the
highlights? Reports. Well, the lowlights.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, it was the B team.
It was the B team.
You would have watched it, Sean.
I was there.
Okay, what did we learn from it?
Well, we learned that Ben White hasn't been forgiven for leaving the World Cup in 2020. He got booed when his name was mentioned, booed on as a sub, and booed when he scored, and then of course gave away the penalty against Uruguay, which resulted in a 1-1 draw.
Quite a match, didn't he?
As we said, it was a white knuckle ride for Ben on Friday night. It was a strange sort of game. We didn't create a lot, but as you say, it was a B team. Uruguay was certainly keen to get stuck in. There was one horrible challenge on Phil Foden, which pretty much finished him off for the game, and may well have ended his World Cup hopes as well, because he didn't impress on the night. Tomorrow night against Japan, it'll be much nearer the side that will play in the World Cup, but not close enough, because we will have players missing.
Well, we lost Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, John Stones.
John Stones, Jude Bellingham won't be in the team tomorrow night. So, but it is a chance for the players who are on the fringe of the team to stake claim. So you'll get. Well, is Morgan Rogers on the fringe? You might think he's the first choice, but he'll probably get a chance to play. Harry Kane will start. About time we saw him back in action as well. But we've still got that problem of what happens if Harry Kane gets injured. And I don't think we're anywhere nearer solving that problem.
Do you think, we were laughing about this in the office the other day, do you think that maybe Thomas Tuchel with Harry Kane might return to Roy Hodgson's baffling policy of getting him to take the corners? Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
What was that about?
I know that was a bit bizarre. It was weird. Actually, Roy was doing his press conference today at Bristol City. We talked about that. We talked about that the other day, and he's as chatty as ever, is Roy. He seems quite happy to be back, but a little bemused, I think, about being back at Bristol City.
He's 80, is that right? Or is he
78?
Oh, he's not quite 80 yet.
No, 70, I mean, 78.
Would it be good if Spurs had got, as was mooted, had got Harry
Redknapp versus...
So if Spurs had Harry Redknapp, Bristol had... it'd be like a retirement home, wouldn't it?
Look, you can't deny that Roy is a football enthusiast. I mean, 44 years since he was first at Bristol City, and there he is again. And another football enthusiast is Thomas Tuchel, as I was saying. He is very keen to get a good song out of England tomorrow night, and he needs one. We just need a little bit of an uplift to go to America. Something to get our teeth into and think, you know what, they're not bad.
Anybody, as you say, you're quite right. I didn't. Life's too short. I didn't watch the England friendly against Uruguay. Anybody in that lineup unlikely that impressed?
In the lineup?
Well, yeah, that played on Friday that may have may have done themselves some good.
Well, Garner of Everton is the one who's being talked about. He's an unlikely pick for the squad, and he did himself no harm on Friday night, and maybe get another chance tomorrow playing alongside Elliot Anderson, who's pretty much a shoe-in to start for England, even though he's struggling at Nottingham Forest, or Nottingham Forest are struggling. Been a lot of comparisons between Anderson and Gaza today, about not just because they're Geordies, but playing a similar sort of fashion. Grew up in similar sort of way, plays the same way, and maybe a little more sensible than Gaza.
But most people are.
He's actually he's been having a good season. May have tailed off in the last few weeks, but he's been having a pretty good season, Anderson, and is seen as one of the key figures for England. So it'd be good to see how he plays tomorrow night.
Just very quickly, what are the big games coming up at the weekend?
It's only FA Cup.
It's FA Cup. Is that all it is?
Chelsea versus Port Vale is one of the games this weekend. You can't.
Port Vale are on a run.
And it's Man City, Liverpool, of course, which is
that would be
going to be a bit
well, you and I will talk about that as the week progresses, I am sure. Sean Costis, Director of Sport of the Sun. He's been promoted quite rightly too. Thank you so much. Excellent sport report. Listen, when we come back, we're going to discuss some of the big stories of the day. We've still got lots to do. We'll also be talking about Harry and Meghan. What are they up to? Simon Danjett next, though. He'll join us after the 6 o'clock news to go through the big stories of the day. And then Harry and Meghan, what the hell are they up to now? You better stay tuned to find out. See you in a minute.
Across the UK. on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to my next guest. We're talking about the Royals in about 20 minutes or so. Royal author Robert Jobson will join me. Harry putting it out there that he's waiting for the King to invite him to Sandringham, and when he does, he'll bring his kids, the grandchildren that the King hasn't seen for several years now. A bit weird, isn't it? All very weird. And the King won't invite his son because he doesn't trust him. So we'll talk about that fairly soon. But first, let's go through, and we're also taking your calls, 03444991000. Should we ban the burqa? Kemi Badenoch thinks that perhaps we should. Should we ban first cousin marriages, that Islamic practice that does lead to a disproportionate number of children, babies being born with birth defects? Should we ban that? 03444991000. Why don't the police solve any burglaries? 92% they didn't solve last year. In a third of the country, they didn't solve any burglaries. 03444991000. And the BBC, why does it keep employing wrong uns? Scott Mills now, the latest in an increasingly long line of men promoted to very high up positions in the state broadcaster having to leave in disgrace. Well, Jimmy Savile didn't have to do that. He died. But we have Jimmy Savile. We have Rolf Harris, who also died, actually. Hugh Edwards, Greg Wallace, and now Scott Mills. What's going on? 03444991000. First up, though, let's talk about some of the big stories of the day with former Labour MP Simon Danjic. Welcome, Simon.
Good to be with you, Kevin.
Always a pleasure. Well, first of all, I just think this is a bad look on a day like today when millions of Brits are struggling, people who work very hard, struggling to keep a roof over their heads, struggling to feed their kids, struggling to get by in the cost of living crisis. On this day, they learn, those hard-working people who are having such a bad time, learn that benefit claimants this week get a 6.2% pay rise, in effect, for not working. And MPs are to receive £3,300 a year more, a pay rise of £3,300 a year, taking their pay up into the mid-90,000s. So, this is not good on a day like this. This announcement, particularly benefits claimers, 6.2% pay rise for not working. All of those who work hard and are struggling, they're going to be infuriated by that, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely right. What Labour are creating is a two-tier society where you have hard-working people having to subsidise people who are on benefits to have a different lifestyle. And, you know, and it's getting worse and harder for people. The cost of living crisis, the cost of petrol is phenomenally high now because of the Iran war. So you've got people who are feeling real pressure, and you've got others on benefits. And it's 6.2% increase for those on universal credit benefit. But also what we see in a few days' time is the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap. So there are families out there on benefits who will get a windfall in the next few days. And it's been calculated, some families with a high number of children will get over £10,000 a year increase in their benefits because of this change by Labour. And I make this important point in terms of the two-child benefit cap. That's deliberately attempting to appeal to the Muslim community. There's no doubt about that, because they have much bigger families. And if you recall from the Gorton and Denton, I'll finish on this point, Kevin, but it's an important one. The Gorton and Denton by-election, you'll recall Lucy Powell campaigning there, and the first thing she said at this hustings meeting, at this campaign meeting for the Muslim community, remember, we've scrapped the 2-child benefit cap. And that's why, I tell you, it's a disgrace. It really is.
Yeah, apart from the fact we're already paying for this, I think it's currently about £330 billion a year, our welfare bill. So hard-working Brits are paying for that. They expect that within a year that bill will have gone up to about £420 billion a year, possibly even more. And now we learn, well, that you've got the 2-child benefit cap, which will make the amount even higher. And now we learn it's going to go up by 6.2%. That is not a good look for people who are working their hinds off, trying to pay, just trying to get by. And meanwhile, people who aren't working have got a 6.2% pay rise, and increasingly this country becomes not a country, it becomes a welfare system with a state attached to it. We're paying for all of this. Let me know what you think, folks. 0344 499 1000. Simon, here is your former boss, Keir Starmer. Simon, by the way, had the sense to leave the Labour Party. He's now with Reform UK, former Labour MP, of course. This is what Keir Starmer said, Simon, earlier today about another of the crises that he's doing absolutely nothing about. This one, the migrant crisis, the small boat crisis. This is Keir Starmer earlier today.
Well, we are working closely with France in relation to the channel crossings. And I'll be really clear, I want to reduce those numbers. Nobody but nobody should be making that journey across the channel in a small boat. That's why we have to work closely with the French and others upstream. And we're having good discussions with them about how we take that forward.
You got a better deal?
Well, look, we're taking discussions to take that forward.
It's just, he's not doing anything, is he, as he's proving there. What he is proving there is that there's been a breakdown in talks, negotiations between Britain and France, because for 3 years we've given the French £500 million to not stop the boats, to patrol the beaches and stop migrants and boats, but we know they've only stopped about 37% of them. So 63% of migrants and illegal boats got through. So what's the point of giving them £500 million for that? But Starmer there confirming he wants to give them more money to not stop the boats. We did a story just now saying that apart from the fact that there's no deterrence to stop these migrants coming across, when they do come across, they're nearly all young men of sexually active age, between the age of 16 and 35, 36, something like that. We did a story earlier saying that a couple of Eritreans came over. They were security checked. One of them was given full migrant refugee status within 6 months, so he was able to get full benefits. What they didn't establish was that both of these guys were on Denmark's most wanted list. They were wanted in connection with an alleged gang rape in Denmark. We didn't even spot this guy, but we've spotted it now 2 years late. They've finally been returned to Denmark. But it proves we're letting all these people in, Simon. There's no deterrence to stop them. And when they do get here, it's quite clear that our security checks on people we are letting into Britain that we know nothing about, it's quite clear that our security checks are negligent, to say the least, non-existent, to say the worst.
Completely right. We're nearly 2 years into Starmer's term of office, aren't we? A Labour government. And I reached the conclusion some time ago that he genuinely believes in open borders. I think he's deliberately trying to dilute the population of Britain. You can't reach any other conclusion. I mean, he talks a good game, but the numbers are going up all the time. There is no evidence that he really wants to stop illegal immigration coming into Britain. In fact, I would argue that the evidence is that he's happy to welcome these people into Britain. And he knows he has to talk tough to try and retain votes at the local elections, regional elections, and at the forthcoming general election. But the truth is that he believes in open borders, and all the evidence is there. There's just more and more people coming here, and we're having to pay for it. It's utterly disgraceful. And as you point out, the the whole issue about safety and security for women and young girls in Britain with these people is really concerning.
It's a disgrace. I mean, there's ample evidence to indicate that we're in the process of importing a sex crime epidemic, because these young migrant men who we let into the country are clearly responsible for a disproportionate number of sex crimes. Afghanis alone estimated to be 22 times more likely to be arrested for, charged with or prosecuted of sex offences, rape or sexual assault, than British men. So generally speaking, 3.5% foreigners, 3.5 times more likely to be convicted of sex offences than British citizens, and so on and so forth. So we're importing a sex crime epidemic that is endangering women and children in this country. And the fact that this government does nothing about it is an abrogation of its duty, if you ask me.
So Starmer thinks it's a price worth paying, doesn't he? The abuse of women and girls in Britain, he believes, is a price worth paying for allowing illegal immigrants to come into the country. His open borders philosophy that he completely buys into. There's no other explanation for where we are at this. You know, he immediately cancelled the Rwanda plan, which I am convinced would have worked, was starting to work. I truly believe. He cancelled that immediately. That's cost us millions of pounds. He's pretended to have conversations with France about them doing more, and one in, one out. That's been a complete joke. Now they've talked about giving £40,000 to those that will leave voluntarily. Well, they'll just come back and collect some more money. I mean, the whole scheme approach is an absolute mess, but it's what he wants it to be.
It's a shambles, utter shambles. Let's talk about the BBC now. Scott Mills, he, until this morning, was the host of the £360,000 a year host of one of the biggest shows on the BBC. Some would say the biggest. That is The Breakfast Show on Radio 2. Millions of people tune in. Used to be 9 million. I think it's down to 6 or 7 million now. But it's huge, huge show. Suddenly, Scott Mills, who hasn't had the job for that long, gone, sacked. Last Tuesday, he came off air for the final time. We're now being told that he's been sacked, summarily dismissed, after some kind of complaint last Tuesday, which we're told, not by the BBC, but we are informed, might be related to the breakup of some relationship with some guy he had 10 years ago, in 2016. We don't know what's gone on. The BBC have just said, oh, we don't comment on personal matters, but we can confirm that Scott Mills will not work for the BBC again, will not be contracted to work for the BBC again due to his personal conduct. That's all we're getting from them. Now, this is a huge job. We need more from the BBC than just that vague, nebulous statement. Now, I'm not saying they deserve, that we demand they give us every spit and comma, every sordid detail. I'm not saying that, but we deserve more than that, because we pay for this damn organisation. We do not pay for this damn organisation for them to keep secrets from us, and yet time and time and time again, that's what they do. That's what they did about Jimmy Savile. That's what they did about Rolf Harris. That's what they did about Hugh Edwards. That's what they did about Greg Wallace. And now that's what they're doing about Scott Mills. They need to tell us more than that, don't they? They owe us more than that.
Absolutely right. All they have said is it's to do with his personal conduct. Well, that's just not enough. And the irony is that we'll find out eventually. The Mirror and other newspapers are already speculating about what it is. So why doesn't the BBC, which is a news outlet in its own right, come and tell us exactly what has gone on or what the allegations are against it? But this is a major loss of a significant player at the BBC. And as you point out, I mean, the last biggest presenter to leave was Hugh Edwards in 2024, so it's not that long ago. But you mentioned Rolf Harris, Stuart Hall worked at the BBC for a long time, Jimmy Savile, and I make this point. You'll recall that I wrote the biography and outed Cyril Smith as a paedophile, and I make this important point. Cyril Smith appeared on a series program of Jimmy Savile's Jim'll Fix It, and you had Jimmy Savile, you had Gary Glitter, and you had Cyril Smith all in the studio. In all seriousness, you would not have wanted to be a child in that episode, I can tell you.
Yeah, got to be slightly careful. We don't know what Scott Mills has done, but what we can say is it's something very, very serious. Now, what it does indicate in terms of all these guys, no one is saying that what he may or may not have done in any way equates to what Jimmy Savile done. I'm sure it didn't. But he's clearly a wrong 'un. So once again, the BBC, we're talking about all these men we've been talking about, doesn't mean we equate all of their alleged offences, that they're all the same. Doesn't mean that. But what it means is they should never have had their jobs. So Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Greg Wallace, Hugh Edwards, as you said, Stuart Hall, and now Scott Mills. None of these guys should have had their jobs. They should not have been appointed to these jobs. They are clearly wrong-uns. Now, it's difficult to work these things out during the job application process, to be fair. But the BBC just seems to get it wrong every single time. They've got a new Director General, a guy called Matt Britton. Poor guy, this is already a massive headache for him, and he hasn't even started. He needs to sort this selection process out among many other problems that the BBC has got, right?
Absolutely right. It's how they manage their talent, isn't it? You're right. We don't know why this particular presenter's been dismissed. It could be absolutely anything, but it must be significant for him to be given his marching orders in such a short period of time. It must be significant. But that's why they should be telling us a little bit more than what they are doing. But how they manage their talent, how they recruit their talent, we've gone through the names. I mean, it's as though the place attracts a certain kind of person to some extent. These are all gathering together. And there's something intrinsically wrong with the BBC, and that needs to, because we keep having the same conversation every 18 months, don't we, about somebody who's a significant player at the BBC. Surely they can't keep going on like this.
Yeah, exactly right. As I say, we don't know what Scott Mills has done. A lot of speculation. It might be something to do with some breakup of a relationship he had with a guy 10 years ago, which would beg the question, so what did they find out about this breakup 6 days ago that has resulted in his almost immediate dismissal? I mean, something bad has happened here. And the BBC, as I say, no one is expecting them or demanding that they give us every spit and comma, every detail. But they've got to stop this. We don't comment on personal matters. Well, you should. Well, we pay for this. We pay for that guy's £360,000 a year. We pay for all your salaries. We pay for this organisation to the tune of about £3.5 billion every year. You can't take our money and keep secrets from us. You can't keep doing this. It's got to change, Simon. That said, very good to have you on the show, as always. Excellent stuff. Simon Danjett, their former Labour MP. Let me know what you think about what Simon was saying. But the BBC, what goes on at that place? That they keep giving these top roles to guys who simply, clearly do not deserve them. Why can't they spot when people are wrong-uns? Because lots of wrong-uns have been given very high-profile, prestigious roles on screen at the BBC. And they keep having to leave in disgrace, getting fired or sacked or leaving under a cloud. What is going on? Why? Why can't they get this right? 0344 499 1000. I suppose in the end what I'm saying is, given that they keep getting all this wrong, why do we have to pay for them? They can make all the mistakes in the world if they're private, but not if we're paying for them. If they make mistakes, they owe us an explanation because we pay their bloody wages. Aren't you sick of this? 0344 499 1000. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll talk to top royal author Robert Jobson about the latest goings-on Planet Harry and Meghan. Extraordinary developments over the weekend. We'll discuss them after these messages. Stay exactly where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just talking about Easter eggs here in the studio. They're really expensive, apparently. They're like 10 quid. Apparently, some Easter eggs, like this is basically sweets, isn't it? Chocolate, 18 quid. Have you bought any Easter eggs that have shocked you in terms of their price? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. As I say, it's just candy. 18 quid. Let me know. 0344 499 1000. Before we discuss Easter eggs and other topics, we'll be taking all your calls a little later in the show. In fact, from after this item for the rest of the show. So get on the phone, 0344 499 1000, Easter eggs and other issues. Before we get to that, let's talk about the royal family, Harry and Meghan, and let's go straight over to top royal author, where are we at? Robert Jobson. Hello, the royal editor, of course. Hello, Rob.
Hi, Kevin.
Now, big story today going round, sort of started the weekend. So it seems to be like a stuck record, but Harry wants the king, his dad, to invite him, Meghan and the kids to Sandringham for family time. So basically he's putting the ball in the king's court. Why don't you just invite me? You say you haven't seen your grandchildren for years. Well, I'll bring them over. By the way, I demand full police security if I do come. Same old story. And the King, frankly, along with the rest of the royal family, Rob, I don't think they want to be around Harry because they don't trust him or Meghan in terms of what may or may not be said and in terms of what is said ending up in the media. That's why he's not invited, right?
Well, if he picked up the phone instead of used his PR man to stick the story out there, then maybe they might start to be able to build some trust. But if you're going to conduct your business in a way through the media in the way that he does, then why should anybody close to the King or the King himself actually feel any belief that this guy's going to be trustworthy? Because all he's doing is trying to create the whole story and put the ball in his father's court, which at the end of the day, I'm sure as a grandfather, he'd like to see his grandkids. I'm sure he would, but I'm not too sure they particularly want to see Meghan, and some of them won't want to see Harry after what he wrote about them in Spare. And that's what it boils down to. They don't trust him.
Yeah, because he's got this kind of strange attitude to all of this. His attitude now seems to be, yeah, OK, maybe some of the stuff we said to Oprah and some of the stuff in my book was a bit much, but hey, that's in the past. Let's mend the bridges. Let's get back to business, and maybe you can let me do some royal duties back in Britain. We can forgive and forget, can't we? Well, the attitude, I think, certainly of Prince William, but also the King, the rest of the royal family, is no, we can't forgive him. We can't forgive and forget.
The King's got to balance it, hasn't he, Kevin? The reality is he's got his son, William, who's putting in the hours at the moment. He's supposed to be there. He's going to be the next king, and he's going to lead the way. And at the moment, there's no way that he's going to show any. There's no building of bridges with William and Harry. That's just not happening. And that's not happening for many reasons. But also his wife, Camilla, who was called the Wicked Witch by Harry and all sorts of things. So why would the King want to go and do this and rock the apple, rock the whole thing, create a big problem for then Harry to fly back after a few days to Los Angeles and leave the whole mess in his wake? I don't see, the very fact that it's been conducted through spokesmen and friends of the King, it suggests to me that this has all been done, as a media story that is probably not going to happen anyway.
Yeah, it seems like a sort of a PR ruse by Harry that puts the King unfairly on the spot, to be honest. It's as if to say, well, I asked him to ask us, but he didn't, so it's his fault, not ours. What do you make, Rob, because you've been on many an official royal tour, what do you make of this upcoming pretend royal tour by Harry and Meghan of Australia? We know they've already done this in Colombia, Nigeria, Jordan, and coming up in about couple of weeks, they're going to go to Australia down under. More and more we're hearing that this will be just a stream of paid for cash for trash public appearances, including Meghan going to this hotel for a weekend where she'll be the main attraction. You can be in her orbit for $2,000 American dollars. This is a money spinning operation, isn't it? And it tends to indicate that they're not doing that well financially at home.
Well, we keep hearing all these deals that have gone bust for them and are not happening anymore on the TV. I mean, there's only a certain amount of time you can cash in on slacking your family off. But I mean, we've pretty much heard it all, haven't we? When it comes to Australia, there's an added difficulty, of course, because the King is still the King of Australia. There's all the debate. There's 40,000 people have signed a petition saying they don't want Meghan and Harry coming to Australia. They're really not interested, and they just create an issue. It does create an issue about security again. I mean, I don't see his people are now saying it's a private visit. Everything's taken care of. But I'm sure that the local, having been in Australia, I'm sure the local premiers will be saying, make sure the police chiefs have put officers in the area so there's no problems. And so it is going to cost money. It is going to be a conflict of interest for the King. At the moment, it's sort of probably about 50-50 or slightly more in favour of monarchy in Australia. this could tip it the other way. It's the sort of thing they don't really need. The king doesn't need this. And William, who is the next king, certainly doesn't need it.
Yeah, I mean, there's this increasing feeling that this couple may be, in their terms, pretty broke, and they just need to do these foreign tours to rake in the cash because, you know, their Netflix deal's going nowhere. That seems to have been canned. They've got nothing going on. Whether or not her, as ever, online shopping store, which sells mundane domestic products at astronomical prices, you know, like $64 for a candle, you know, thanks but no thanks, $14 for a jar of jam. The jury is out on whether that's making any money. So the feeling is that they're going to go on more and more of these tours because it's basically, hey, I'm coming to a town near you, would you like me to address any professional organisations or events, yours for $100,000. That seems to be what they're doing now.
Well, it's the history repeat itself. It's like the battle of the brothers of old, you know, when we had Edward VIII, when he abdicated. He started doing these things. He famously went on a trip to Nazi Germany with Wallace Simpson and did the Nazi salute. All of these things, eventually, though, people get tired of this charade of a royal couple. They're not a royal anymore, and I think that they want to be more interested in the real thing. You know, you've got the King's forthcoming trip, should be going ahead on the 27th of April. You're going to have official trips by William and Kate. I do think that the people will follow that. I think less and less people are giving this traction, and I think they're going to find it more and more difficult. That's why they want to be seen to be with the King and be part of the fold, because that increases their position, increases their currency, because they're still seen as being part of the fold. The longer they're outside of the firm looking in, the less traction, the less currency they have.
Yeah, they do seem to be a declining. I think interest in them is declining. You know, they just bang the same drummer all the time. That's why Netflix got rid of them, and that's why I think interest in them is dwindling. But we still follow them with.
Well, the one thing I think that is interesting is the enigma of these two kids and what they're going to be. You know, you got Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, which, you know, is controversial the way she was named anyway. But we keep seeing half a head of them or the back of their head. And so they're all dressing this up to say, well, they're not using their children. But they know more than anything that they will probably have more traction in terms of media interest than a 41-year-old, you know, former prince or prince, wherever he is at the moment, and the Duchess of Sussex, even though they claim they don't need their titles to conduct their business. But Lilibet and Archie, there is a bit of an enigma about them.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the backs of their heads, they are at great pains to say, the gruesome twosome, we don't use our kids. Every time she posts a picture, old Meghan, of the back of her red-headed kids' heads, it is followed the next day by some kind of special offer on As Ever. So she does use her kids to sell products. There's no doubt about that. Let me ask you a last question, if I can, Rob. Good to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining me. Where's Fergie? Any ideas?
Where's Fergie? I remember doing a Where's Fergie when you and I were on The Sun many years ago. And it was like travelling around for Lord Lucan at the time. I ended up in Phuket, and Kelvin Mackenzie had the headline, "Where the Phuket is Fergie." But it was quite an extraordinary time, and it's a bit like that now. I know that the newsrooms they don't like spending money anymore, but I've been sort of sending people all over the place, from Donegal to even they even thought that she was in the UAE. That was before the Iranians drones started in. There's a lot of speculation that she's closer to home. There's talk about Portugal, but people haven't been able to find her. She's done a remarkable job of for somebody who's very recognisable and quite loud sometimes of not being found. So at the moment, we just don't know.
Yeah, she's disappeared since the Epstein file scandal involving her exploded all over the headlines, and this was the end of last year. She has not been seen this year in public. So as you say, there were reports she was staying at a £13,000 a night Swiss wellness retreat, then some spa hotel in Donegal. There's been talk that she was in the Middle East, that she's in Australia. She might be staying with Priscilla Presley, but wherever the hell she is, we just don't know, do we?
But she certainly got all the news desks shook up, so she could be with Priscilla Presley. All shook up. Yeah, I don't know. I think that with Fergie, she will come out, and when she'll come out with, there'll be some big announcement that she sold her book or she's done something, because she always has a habit of coming back in this way. Personally, I think this is a bridge too far. The fact that she was the first person to see Epstein, the first person to take her kids to see him after he got out of prison, I think is pretty damning, actually.
Yeah, she's not going to get forgiven, but she might do a deal with the publisher to write the book that the royal family are terrified of. In fact, I think we all are. But she'll take the money because she needs it. Rob, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. The brilliant royal editor, his current book is The Windsor Legacy. That's out there. You could get William at 40. Catherine, Princess of Wales, the biography, all of these best-selling books by Rob Jobson. Recommend them all. He's one of the best, a great royal editor, great author, a knower of the royals. So let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to stick with you all the way till the end of the show. Your calls. I don't know if you've got any WhatsApp voice notes, but if we have, we'll play them out. I'll read some of your messages. So that's 03444991000. You know what we're talking about. Give me a call. Let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk That Next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Calls for the rest of the show, 03444991000. Couple of messages. This is Stalk. Pretend royal tour. I didn't spit my coffee out today because I was waiting for you to say it. Cracks me up every time. Well, it is. Harry and Meghan go on pretend royal tours. They're not official royal tours. They're just two private citizens pretending to be the king and queen or something. This is John in Lincolnshire. I remember your late wonderful colleague, Howard Hughes. He never earned a fraction of that salary. We're talking about Scott Mills, despite being a winner of numerous journalism awards, yet the BBC throw buckets of our money at these mediocre people. Why? That's John in Lincolnshire talking about Scott Mills, £360,000 a year, but not anymore because he got fired this morning due to his personal conduct. What does that mean? This is from Margaret. I guarantee the King will invite Harry to come and stay with him. And never mind he trashed everyone. His grovelling will pay off. William will be on holiday and nowhere to be seen. So many opinions. It's great we can chip in. You're always welcome, Margaret. Always want everybody's opinion, and I do my best to give them an airing. So thank you for all your messages. Keep them coming in. Keep phoning. We can't get everybody on, but we do our best. We've made a personal note on this show to get more calls on. We do our best, but you can never really do enough because we get so many. Let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Tony in Doncaster. Hello, Tony. You want to talk about benefits? What would you like to say?
Yeah, I don't know if the word is I'm disheartened or I'm disgusted. I'll just give you one quick bullet point thing out there. My good lady, who's too upset to talk, she's a carer like many hundreds of thousands of people are in the country.
Respect to her. It's a very important job. Very important job.
Yeah, I mean, it's a job I wouldn't do, and I just am appreciative that people like my good lady and people out there will do it. Here's the bullet point. She's been told by her company in East Yorkshire that she's going to get a wage rise this year of 2%.
2%.
And 2%, right? Now, I'm just going to throw this one out here, right? For anybody driving on listening tonight who may be working in the supermarket, working in the NHS, working in care, this is the crux. People are getting 2-3%. Some of us, as you remember with the last budget, about having us wages frozen for 3 years. And we are giving people 6.2. I'm talking about people on the
6.2%, people who don't work, people who get benefits. Yeah.
Well, it gets better than that, because this is the point I'm really angry about. People say they need this money for basic food, amenities, bills, one thing and another, right? These people, or as a percentage of these people, are going on holiday abroad. How can you afford to go on holiday abroad on the DWP if you're living on the basic?
It's true. They've all got sort of widescreen TVs. You go to their houses; they're brilliantly equipped, and then we'll be told, "Oh, they go to food banks." You're always told that. You know, this is one of the refrains of the left is: if this country is so great, if everybody's doing so well, why are there food banks? Well, don't have food banks then. That isn't really a valid point. But your wife, Tony, who is, does a job which we all know, a carer. Carers don't get much money. They damn well should, because it's a very, very important job, and it's not necessarily a nice job most of the time. Respect to our carers. She's going to get a 2% pay rise, and she's going to watch all the people who don't work getting a 6.2% benefits rise. She must be furious.
Well, here's the last point on it. All this is going to encourage people to do is get, like me and everybody else, people say, are you angry? Are you bitter? I am bitter. I'm bitter on the unfairness for working people, and this is just going to drive more people to not want to work. And what's that saying about the state of our country?
Exactly right. This is incentives for those who don't work, and it's another, your wife, Tony, all of us, we are examples of why this government expects us workers to work our backsides off, get up, alarm clock Brits and all that, get up at 4 in the morning, work to keep a roof over our heads, to feed our kids. They expect us to do this and also fund, most importantly in their minds, the welfare system. 330 billion quid a year, rising soon to 420 billion quid a year. We have to pay for that. Tony's wife, 2%. They're getting a 6.2% pay rise. Totally wrong. Tony, fantastic call. My regards to your wife. Tony in Doncaster. Let's take a quick call before the break. Let's go to Andrew in Halifax. Andrew, you believe the burqa should be banned. Why is that?
Absolutely, Kevin. Good evening. We've had this conversation before. I think it's absolutely crucial that not just the burqa, but all face coverings, balaclavas, etc., should be banned in public places.
Yes. It's not a religious thing, just a security thing, a basic... I think a basic facet of modern life. We shouldn't have faces being covered.
Absolutely. Your face is your window. It's your business card to the world.
Yeah.
And if you close that off, not only are you saying that you want to shy away from everything, you don't want to be identified, but you reserve the right, you believe, to hide your identity in public, which is contrary to how 99.9% of the rest of the world feel.
Yeah. And the other aspect of this, Andrew, tell me what you think. I made my feelings clear. It's first cousin marriage. So Kemi Badenoch saying we should ban the burqa for the reasons you've just explained.
Yes.
She's also saying we should think about banning first cousin marriage, Islamic practice, very common in sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, where first cousins get married. It's known as incest. It's not even illegal in this country, and yet if there's a first cousin marriage, the chances of a baby from that marriage being born with birth defects are significantly increased. We should ban this for reasons of the safety and the welfare of the children, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. I mean, and there's a personal issue for me in this. I've been 30 years in disability care. 27 of those was based working in the Bradford district, which is the neighbouring district to myself. Bradford Council, it doesn't have much going for it, but it does have a very, very good network and provision of disability services. And I was once told that the reason for that was because there are so many birth defects in the Pakistani community through first cousin marriages in that city. And the council has bent over backwards to accommodate them, which is fair enough. It's not the child's fault, but this is a cost to the British taxpayer.
It seems to me absolutely bizarre that we do not outlaw a system of marriage that is guaranteed to produce children with birth defects. That should be against the law. We should not be sponsoring a marital system that produces as a high percentage of producing babies with birth defects. It's just bizarre, Andrew, excellent call. Thank you very much. Please call me again. Andrew in Halifax. Let's go to break. Let's come back with more of your calls. That next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm hearing through the grapevine, folks, that the national newspapers tomorrow might be very interesting when it comes to Scott Mills. At least one of them may be preparing to publish the real story of what's happened with that guy. And it may or may not be something to do with a relationship that ended 10 years ago. It might be nothing to do with that. So the papers might be interesting tomorrow. So we will wait them with great interest. So first of all, though, let's go back to some phones. Peter Cardwell will be in a little while to tell you what he's got lined up for your entertainment from 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. on his show. But first of all, let's talk to Grace in London. Hello, Grace. You want to talk about Saturday's march? It was supposed to be a march for love, a march against hate. I saw something of it myself. Other people I know who went said it wasn't a march against hate, it was a march for hate. What are your feelings?
Well, from what I could see on Twitter, there didn't seem to be much that was on Twitter, at least, that hugely concerned me, except for some people with IRGC flags. But I'm not presuming that.
Well, I'm told, Grace, I can tell you, there was a lot of pro-Palestine, a lot of marching of the free Palestine, death to the IDF, from the river to the sea, when will Palestine be free, and so on and so forth. In other words, it wasn't so much against hate, it was more for hatred of Israel.
Well, I think that the problem is trying to bring together so many people and groups. You really lose any kind of clear message at all.
Under the false banner, under the false flag of, if you're left-wing, then you are for love and wonderfulness. If you're right-wing, you are for hate. That entire proposal is utter nonsense.
It is. Human beings are so much more complicated than lots of people. I noticed how James Price mentioned to check first the speck in your own eye before trying to deal with the plank in your neighbour's eye, which is one of Jesus' teachings. And I think I often reflect on that. I need to reflect on it even more, because we all want to feel like we're the good guys and the other people are the bad guys. And I feel like this march kind of reminded me of that, kind of wanting to say all those other people are really bad and we're really good. It was particularly concerning hearing Zara Sultana say it's either socialism or barbarism.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
Yeah, well, that Grace, feeds into this notion that these people have. If I'm left-wing, I am full of love, I am for love, and I am against hate. If I am right-wing, I am full of hate and I am against love. That's their ethos, and it's nonsense.
When Jesus gave that teaching about checking the speck in one's own eye, the point is that all of us have got things we need to consider and deal with. It's completely fallacious to imagine that some people are good and some people are bad. Actually, everyone is a big mixture. Part of the reason Jesus told us to love our enemies is that it's not the case that there are just some good people and some bad people on one side of the political spectrum or the other. We need to think seriously about hate wherever it is on the political spectrum.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you where it was, Grace. It was in strong evidence on Saturday, and what we have to bear in mind, what we always have to think about in terms of the backdrop to this explosion of love snaking through the streets of central London on Saturday, was that no main Jewish organisations were invited. 500 organisations took part, but no major Jewish organisations because they weren't asked. So I'll leave you to make of that what you will. Grace, always good to talk to you. Got to move on for now, but excellent call as always. Call me again soon. Grace in London. Finally, let's go to the great Georgina in London. Georgina, hello. You want to talk about cousin marriage? What would you like to say?
Hello, Kevin. Well, the last time I looked, incest was illegal in Britain, and this is what first cousin marriage is.
It is incest, isn't it? I agree.
It is incest, yes. I mean, now, we have millions of legal and illegal migrants in our country, and them coming over here has become a bit of a problem, because not only are they coming over here, they're bringing their medieval ideologies and traditions with them. Now, we are the host nation, Kevin. We host these people, and we expect that our traditions are prioritised above traditions that are medieval, like genital mutilation with little girls and forced marriages, and also this cousin marriage. We've got to start making a stand now and not allowing this kind of behaviour within our country. We are a Christian country, Kevin, not an Islamic country. The last time I looked, it wasn't Britannistan, it was Great Britain. And we need to start taking focus that our laws and our rules must be abided by anyone who comes into our country from overseas. It's got to be ridiculous now. We feel like we are the visitors within our own country.
But this, I agree, Georgina, but in terms of first cousin marriages, you know, it strikes me, it seems to be bizarre we allow them legally. They should be against the law because statistically they produce proportionally far more birth defects in babies than other forms of marriage, shall we say, the more traditional forms of marriage. So this is the result of incestuous sex, if you like, and that produces babies with birth defects. Well, we should be banning it for medical reasons. It's not fair to the kids.
Exactly. Well, I've had 5 children, and being an older mum, as I was, well, absolutely, I'd hit decrepitude by the time I had my last little boy.
I'm sure you didn't.
Every check under the sun. Before my son, I had amniocentesis. I had everything done to make sure my son was in good, fine, fit health before he was born. Now, it's our NHS is stretched to capacity as it is, and we cannot afford for people to be having sexual relations when they are related, having children that have horrific birth defects. I mean, imagine how the child, what kind of a life
it's bad for the couple, it's terrible for the parents, it's terrible for the kids. We just shouldn't be allowing it. It is obvious. It's, you know, the cost is one thing, but it is just clearly morally wrong to allow marriages that produce children with birth defects. End of. It's as simple as that. That is crazy to legalise that and continue to legalise it. Georgina, with you all the way, another excellent call. Thank you very much. Georgina in London. Peter Cardwell's in the studio. Hi, Pete. What have you got lined up for our audience's entertainment?
Well, we'll be talking a little bit about the story that has been absolutely gripping the BBC all day. Do you know what the #1 story in the BBC 6 o'clock news this evening was? Scott Mills. Scott Mills.
Oh,
the number one story in the world, apparently.
Well, why don't they tell us something about it then?
Yes, some information would be helpful. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the betrayal of the strivers as well, with these ridiculous benefits increases. 1 in 8 parents now reporting their child is disabled. Are they? I mean,